No.
Okay. So we're going to start today, and I am recording this. Welcome. My name is Leah Dardis, and I am the Director of Special Education here in Oceanside Unified. And I am with my district's teacher on special assignment, Lynn Dudas. And Lynn really focuses on our students with who need a lot of support, a high support level of need in behavior and in academics. And today we're going to be talking about our Parent and Guardian's Guide to Active Participation in IEPs. Lynn, in the chat, do you see the links to the PowerPoints? We're going to drop those into the chat for everyone. So our purpose is always to collaborate with every family that we have in Oceanside. And we have a lot of different families and they look different in Oceanside, and that's okay. But really our goal is to always engage our parents and guardian as partners in the process of special education. It's critical to the success of our kids. So today we're going to be working on these 4 ideas. So learning how to organize your child's IEP paperwork in an IEP binder, how to prepare for an IEP meeting, how to actively participate in the IEP process, and then always, what do I do if I need help? These materials we found from understood.org, and we're crediting them for their excellent work in organizing an IEP binder. And so I really am appreciative of that. What we have done is taken their information to present in a slideshow so that our parents can really have an ability to see this in this way. So I'm going to stop sharing because I didn't share correctly the first time, and I'm going to try it again. And so that way, when we share, we can watch the video clip. We're going to really watch a very short video. Do you see the video, Lynn? Did it come up?
Yes, now I do.
Okay. So what was up before?
It was just a dark screen.
Okay, thank you. So this is how to organize your child's IEP binder. And this is in English, yes, but it's going to give you a broad overview of what the information that we're going to be talking about. What I love about this organization, understood.org, is that it is really parent friendly. It's also very teacher friendly and gives information in both English and Spanish. So if your child has a certain disability and you want to really focus on that disability. So for example, my daughter has ADHD. So I really went and looked at different kind of strategies to help her with her ADHD. And so it has a lot of really great information. So we're going to watch this video. It's really short. It's only about 2 minutes. I really appreciate how concise that video is to really give you that visual example of what we're going to be talking about today. Let's see if we can advance to the next one because it wasn't going. There we go. So we first start with what is it that we just need to do? And so it was the IEP binder is just getting started. And sometimes that's really just one of the harder steps, because to get to the store, Office Depot, to get your 3-ring binder and find the tab sections. And so I know that I have yet to get that together, but that's my goal this weekend, is to work on my own IEP binder. And so what we look at is we have a 3-ring binder with these tab sections like we saw in the video, a 3-hole punch, and an office supply bag. As these are just best practices. It doesn't mean you have to have it. We're showing you this is a way to keep organized. On the first page, they showed us the IEP binder checklist, which is what we saw on that particular video. And so this one is from that understood.org. It isn't the be all end all. There's a lot of different ways of organizing your IEP binder. This is one strategy, one way, one idea. And as you work through your process, you might have other sections that you want to add or things that you want to take out, and that's fine. We're giving you an overall way to organize your binder. The school communication section, I think, is such an important part, because not all of our communication is through, let's say, through letters back and forth that we can keep a hard copy. Sometimes they're through the emails, they're through texts, they're through phone calls. So this is a way to kind of keep track of those ones so that you can have it all in one central place. We're going to go over the binder sections for the evaluations, for the IEP, for our report card, sample work, and behavior. Okay. So we start off with tab 1. And so in the PowerPoint presentation, we have links here that links right back to the understood.org for you to be able to go back and revisit and download these sheets. This is what they look like. So the school contact sheet, I think is very important for us as moms and dads, because we don't always know who we need to contact at the school. So for example, if your child is having a trouble with bullying, you can go talk to your child's teacher, the guidance counselor, the school principal. All of these people have the ability to help you with that issue. Homework and testing really lies right in here with your classroom teacher. These are the people that you really want to go to first. If you are at elementary school, your child's teacher and your child's case manager may be the same person. It may not be. So understanding who are the people on your child's IEP team and at the school to help you when you need support is really important as part of the success of working with our kids. Okay, the next form is the school communication log. I liked this one because it gave a really easy way to just put that in there. And I'm one of those people who's not good at coming back to my computer to type it all in. I have to handwrite it. So having it already printed out just to handwrite my notes on is pretty typical of how I do it. Even when I'm at work, all of my notes are handwritten. So this kind of works with how I process. But my husband is an electronic kind of a guy and will do this all electronically because that's the easiest way for him to do it. So he will create himself a Google form and plot those in. And so that every time he wants to, he can just have that information. So again, it's whatever is easiest for you. So this is Leah, more low tech, have the school communication log that she's going to write. My husband, who's more high tech and is going to probably make a Google form that he can fill out every time he wants to. But really the idea is for you to help keep track of what was talked about, what was discussed, and what was decided. When you have students that have a lot of different people that interact with them every day. So for example, your kid might have 6 teachers at the middle or high school. Then they have a case manager who helps to support them with their IEP goals. They might have a school counselor that supports them. They might have some speech and language Again, you might have occupational therapy, adaptive physical ed. We're like talking like 7 to 8 people to keep track of with the communications. And so having a way to write it down, what was discussed, what was decided is really important, because when you have so many people to keep track of, I sometimes forget that I've already told one person something and think that they've told everybody else and they haven't, or think that I've told that one person and that I've told everybody and I really only told that one person. So even I struggle sometimes with that communication. So having a way to write it down to keep track of it is important. And then the last one is who to turn to at your school. I had that one already. So I turned school contact sheet. This is the one I was meant to show you, the first one, the school contact sheet. So this is where you can write down your child's homeroom or main teacher, their email and their phone and extension, and all the phones and extension and emails of the people that are really important on here to help support your child. Lynn, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
Well, one thing I was thinking is that sometimes what I like to do if I have a conversation with somebody, a verbal conversation, I like to follow up with an email, and then that way it's in email, because that's where a lot of my communication takes place. And so then that information can then be in the email, and I can say like, oh, just, this is just a summary of what we talked about, and this is what I'm going to do. And so it's just another way of keeping track of the conversations that you have.
And so you can do this all electronically in the IEP binder and keep those communications in your Google Drive in a folder, so that you don't have to search through your email inbox. Because if your email inbox looks anything like mine and you have more than 50 emails in there, things get lost. So being able to download them to come back to reference quickly. And sometimes, even just printing out an email, as much as I hate wasting paper, when it's something really critical, important that you want to refer back to, having that there can be a safety net for you as a parent when you're in the moment and feeling flustered and want to talk about something that's important to you.
That's a good point, Leah. You can use this idea of the IEP binder and create, an IEP binder that's on your computer with different folders and so forth. And
so this could be your folder. So instead of tab 1, this could be folder 1 and be under communication. So our next tab is looking at evaluations. And so this is the request for or referral for evaluation. So when I look at this, it depends on where your child is in the special education process. So for many of our students, they come into us from preschool and have had that request or referral for evaluation from preschool. There are other students, though, where at school, we've noticed and suspected that there's something more going on with their learning, or you as a parent have, and so you request a referral for evaluation. So it's a letter that just says, I'm noticing these things about my child, and I would like to have them evaluated, so that they have that. Or the school has reached out and said, we have held a student success team, and we're noticing that your child is still struggling with reading, and we'd like to do testing to really understand what's going on. That then leads us to our consent to evaluate, which is our assessment plan. So that's our assessment plan here. And so our assessment plan really is about looking at the different areas that we suspect might be areas of disability. So when we have an assessment plan, we're going to check a box. We're going to tell you who the examiner might be. So in academic achievement, it's going to be our education specialist. If you have concerns about health, this might be our school nurse. Intellectual development might be along those lines of your school psychologist. Your speech and language would be your speech and language therapist. Motor development can be a little bit tricky because this one looks at both small and large motor. So this would either be the school-based physical therapist or the school-based occupational therapist. So it could be either one of those, depending on whether it's holding a pencil, which would be occupational therapy, versus being able to move your body in large motor skills, that would be a physical therapist. Our social emotional behavior would be along the lines of our school psychologist. Adaptive behavior can take a lot of different forms. What are you looking when you talk about adaptive behavior, Lynn? Who are you recommending as the adaptive behavior? Because I have a lot of different thoughts and I want to see how we coordinate that.
Usually it's the psychologist that assesses for the adapted behavior. But they give rating scales usually to the teacher and to the parent.
So it's, even though the school psychologist is in charge of it, they're giving those to them. And then as we get into our ages of, I think 15, although the state might be lowering it down to 14, our post-secondary transition, which is for what our students want to do after high school. And if there's other things or alternative means of assessment. So we have students that have vision impairments or deaf of hard of hearing. That's where we might put that other assessments down here. So anytime that you feel that you would like your student to have some different assessments too, we're not just going to say, yes, we assess everything all the time, but it's really about, let's talk about what our concerns are. And if an assessment is really going to help to bring those concerns to light so that we can best address them. And that's what our purpose of our assessment plan is. And then you as a parent have the right to give consent, to not give consent, or to consider for other assessments that you would like to see happening for your child. And of course, if your child is eligible or may become eligible for public benefits, checking this allows us to do Medi-Cal and Medicaid billing. It does not take away from any services from our kiddos. In fact, it enhances their services through the insurance because we're able to provide additional and extra things because of that. So that is our evaluation assessment plan. So that's part of the consent to evaluate in the assessment plan. We also talked about that here you would put the evaluation report. We also call that the multidisciplinary report, very fancy term to say it's everyone's testing and review of records and their observations and their interviews all in one big page report. Usually it's about 28 to 30 pages and it has a lot of different testing terms in it, and it will be going over with you during the initial or every 3 years during a triennial. We put in some testing terms to know because golly, I will tell you, having to understand how tests are done and what each one means, we use the words like norm referenced and test reliability and standard score and standard deviation. Our school psychologists use those terms. I sometimes need to come back and just make sure that I have a good understanding of what those terms might mean, because it's not a term that I use every day. It doesn't mean that I'm not smart or I don't know. It's just, they're not terms that we use every day. And sometimes we have to look them back up to make sure that we have the right understanding of them. And then at any time you don't understand a term that anyone is using during the meeting, it may seem embarrassing, but it's really helpful. I'll give you an example. My first year as principal at Garrison, the school team had used the word of psychosomatic. And it wasn't a term that I was familiar with, and I could break it apart and kind of understand, or somatization, that was what it was. And I thought, oh, that's related to psychosomatic, but it isn't. And so once I looked it up and kind of understood what somatization was, I could then talk about it. But, I'm a pretty well-educated person and been in education for a long time. And, there are terms that even I don't know. And I had to ask the team so that they could help me to understand that. And because I am addicted to Post-its, I had to put a fabulous picture of Post-it flags on there because I think that they're phenomenal. And any books that I read or things that I do, I usually will give little Post-its on there. I don't know. Oh, there you can see, because I just believe that they just help me to stay better organized, and who loves a good excuse to go buy school supplies. In our tab 3, hi, welcome, Heather. Thank you for being here. We have our first two links are the notice of procedural safeguards, and I've left them both here in English and in Spanish. So these are great, and you will get these every single time that you'll be offered them every single time that you have a meeting that's for an IEP, because we really want to make sure that you know what your rights are. And quite frankly, our ed specialist should be going over this with you. But I've read the procedural safeguards, and I will tell you, I don't read legalese as well as every other lawyer does. So I really appreciate this summary of rights from the CDE that really goes over what our rights are as parents in California special education. So parents and students over the age of 18 have the right to participate in their special education services, participate in the IEP, and be informed of all options. You are have the right to receive a prior written notice. So for example, our assessment plan is a prior written notice. When we ask you to sign to come to a meeting, that's a prior written notice. Any of those documents that we ask for you to sign or that we send to you is a prior written notice to say to you, these are what we're trying to talk with you about in a formal way so that you're not surprised. You have the right to give consent, which is in written and informed, and ask for interpreters or ASL interpreters if you're deaf. You have the right to refuse consent for an assessment or placement in special education. If you do that, though, we do write you a prior written notice saying, we have noticed that, or we have heard that you are wanting to discontinue services. We are informing you that we do not believe this in his best interest. However, this is our prior written notice to say that we are here and ready to provide services at the time that you would prefer. Your child must be assessed in a non-discriminatory assessment so that they're not culturally biased or discriminatory. This is really important here in California and different than in other states. We follow the Larry P. And what that means is that students who are African American will not have a cognitive test given to them because of a decision that was made. I want to say was it back in the 70s or the 80s? I don't know. I'm testing knowledge now, and everyone's like, I'm scared. She's asking questions about dates. I don't know. But pretty much what it talks about is that we do not assess students who are African American for their cognitive ability because they have been inherently discriminatory and biased against students who are African American and do not always give an accurate reflection of their cognitive ability. You have the right to receive an educational, independent educational assessment at our expense. And there's a whole policy that we go through with that one. So that's one that we've talked about previously. You have access to your child's records, and you have access to stay in the current program if there's a disagreement about placement. And we do these kinds of prior written notices about that. So it's important that you know that you have the right to have that disagreement, to be given a hearing when you have disagreements, to receive mediation, to file a complaint against your school, to be informed of school discipline and alternative placements, and to be informed of policies regarding children who attend private schools. So all of these are the things that we must do as a school district to inform you of your rights as a parent. And so while I really do appreciate the procedural safeguards and how clear they are, I think that this really helps me as a person to understand what my rights are as a parent or a guardian in special education. Lynn, did you want to add anything?
Just that I looked up the Larry P case, and it was first filed in 1971, and then it was upheld in 1984, which is probably why you weren't sure if it was 70s or 80s.
Dang, look at that. Gold star for Leah. So, as I said, we have the procedural safeguards here, and these are always available to parents. And you could probably paper, what's it called when they put wallpaper your house with them. But they're critical to the success of your child in the school for you knowing what your rights are. Again, in this tab, you should have your prior written notices for each meeting. That's that invitation that says, we're going to hold the IEP meeting on this date. Please confirm that you're going to attend. We also recommend that you put your current IEP, any of the triennials, and your previous IEPs, and any amendments, any of those kind of reports that really talk about your child, because it gives you a history of your child from elementary to middle and to high. So that, let's say when elementary and your child had transitioned to middle school, and you see that in elementary, your child was able to have all these skills, but now in middle school is not having the same skills, you can show through the IEP process and the documents that there was progress on these goals and there's not. So what might be happening here in middle school that we need to make additional assessments, additional supports and accommodations, so we can talk about it in that way. So having the IEPs all through your history will help you. The hard part is that having IEPs all through your history makes you have a 5-inch binder, because those IEPs can be very, very, Heather's nodding her head. So Heather's like, yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah, they're very thick. So 5-inch binder is really good. Yeah, thank you. Or even a binder for every year that you can come back to. So it's a good idea. The next tab again is our report cards and our progress notes. And so what we do is that we are, every time that we have an annual or triennial, we talk about our progress on goals, what our offer of a free and appropriate education is where they are. And this will tell you how often. So on that offer of faith, this tells you how often you would be informed of your child's progress. So right now, this particular child is being notified on a trimester. Their parents will notify on their progress on goals every trimester, and how it's a progress summary report. And that this child needs to follow the district's promotion criteria. This could be different for every student, and that's why we have these options. And so why when people say, well, how often do we notify our parents of progress? I can't give a very overarching answer and say we all do it now, because it's individualized for each child. The next one I thought was very, very helpful is really about helping you to stay on top of your child's IEP goals. When your child has 1 or 2 goals, it can be manageable to keep track of progress on goals. If your child has more than like 5 to 7, I'm going to tell you, that's a lot to keep track of. Even as teachers, we have different ways that we track and collect data to help us to understand that. And you as a parent, your information that you share about your understanding of how they are progressing is so important to help us understand our data, because we understand our data within the school setting, and you helping us to understand how that data looks within the home setting and how that may or may not be affecting our school setting and may or may not be showing the same levels of data. And that helps that conversation to help us really understand what is happening and how we can best support your child. So this IEP goal tracker, I mean, look at how simple it is. It's really just 4 columns. You could draw it up yourself and write it. You don't need to download it, but it tells you, here's the goal. Here's what we call the present level of performance, or PLOP, or really it's just what is the baseline? What are the small steps that would show progress? And what are your observations or questions for school? So let's say the goal was that your child would learn 8 of their 10 Fry's sight words, okay? And so they did a present level performance and they gave a small assessment, and he did not know any of those 10 sight words. So the baseline would be 0 out of 10 of those sight words. So the small benchmark steps might be by, so if we're going to make this as a year goal, and hopefully we'd make a more in-depth and very enrichment goal. This is a very easy, and just a goal to show you how this progression looks, not an actual goal that we would use. But a small step would be that by, let's say we set the IEP goal to start in September, and then by the following September, he would master those 8 out of the 10 words. So every 3 months, we're going to put a small step as he will have learned 3 of the words, and then 6 of the words, and then 8 of the words, so that by the time we have the year goal, he will have made those things. So at home, your observations and questions might be is, we practiced, he's learned them in isolation, but he hasn't learned them when we're reading our books. Or he's learned them when we're reading our books and he'll point it out if I point it to him. So you can talk about what you're seeing when he's learning those words or using them at home with you. Or maybe he's using them out in the public and you're like, wow, he's reading the and all of those words in, because we have such a literacy rich kind of, advertisements out there that, we can use a lot of those as words. So this would be a way to track your goals. Lynn, how does that work when you're looking at goal tracking within the data collection as an education specialist? So I talked about it from a parent lens. Talk to me about it from a teacher lens.
Well, for students that are either in preschool or mod severe, we actually have the benchmarks. And so we actually divide it up, like you said, where, the goal would be maybe, 3 words and then 6 words. And I mean, I know your example is a simple example, but so we do that anyway, but then with the mild mod population, like that would be something that, you don't necessarily have the short-term objectives written in the IEP, but you might have, you know, a goal kind of to get to a certain number of work, certain amount of time. But definitely the collaborating with the family to find out what the child can do at home is really important, because we want the students to be able to generalize to like every environment. And sometimes what we see students being able to do at home, and the progress sometimes is, you know, faster in one environment or another. So I think it's really important that the parents do talk with the education specialist about the progress that they see at home, or lack of progress, if that's the case.
Yeah, it's really important. And so like I gave you that example right now, they do have an example down here. I just thought it was too wordy to go through, but if you want to come back and revisit it, absolutely. And I love the questions right here that the parents asking is, why can't she remember the vocabulary? What can I do at home to help her? Will she be able to move on to the next grade level? So these are all questions that we as parents have about our children. And so this was pretty much what we talked about here, was that IEP goal tracker. We talked about the present level of performance. So we call it the PLOP, the PLEF, or the PLP. All of those just mean is, what is your child doing right now? And then where do we want them to be? And so, you know, that's really going to give you a good understanding of what are the present levels of performance. So, and if you want to see like how it can be written in a clearer way versus the less clear way, you know, this is a very vague one right here where it says Brianna is not progressing adequately in her second grade reading curriculum. So as a teacher, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, did she come in reading at the beginning of second grade and is still there in the middle of second grade? Did she come in not reading second grade material? I mean, I don't really know what this means. The next one though, does tell me very clearly, she is reading 15 to 20 words per minute with 3 to 8 errors in a second grade material. She reads slowly with inaccurate decoding skills. That I can really see as her baseline, like she really is struggling with getting faster at reading. So this would tell me, as someone who knows a lot about reading, that she just needs more practice with easier text to get more fluent, and then building it up to the decoding part of becoming what an effective reader might sound like. Tab 5 is about sample work. And this can be a little bit tricky because it's not always worksheets or things that are tangible. And sometimes the work that we do in classrooms isn't going to have an actual physical thing come home. What I mean by that is, for example, when I'm teaching a guided reading lesson, I have kids have little whiteboards in front of them. And so we're going to work on, let's say, some of the initial words that are going to be seen in that book. And let's say I'm teaching first grade and it's going to be the word, the, like, and want. So I might prep them and say the, like, and want, and we'll write it, we'll practice it, we'll trace it on our whiteboard, we'll do that. Now, is there a way that I can physically send that home to the parents? No, because they erase the whiteboard. So when we talk about newest work, it's not that you're always going to have that, but you will have reports about how your child might be doing, and you'll have a mixture between that hands-on kind of learning and some of these documents or artifacts from the learning. So for example, the drawing reflections, I liked how this teacher wrote, I liked how you labeled the vertices, or what I learned about colonists. These are two different kinds of student work. If your child is more impacted and going to be more in a special day class, like our C's classroom or our moderate to severe, this is the kind of daily communication log you would be expecting to get. For our population of students that are in more of the mild mod typical general education setting, this would not be something that we would expect any of our teachers to really do, because it's not the way that we normally communicate. However, there are times where we are working on that communication between home and school, so it would be appropriate to ask. But again, it's individualized about what your child needs to be successful. And then remembering that for every child that we do this for, you know, it does take time, 3 to 5 minutes. So that's going to be a time. How long did it take you to fill out your daily news sheets, Lynn, when you were in the classroom?
Well, I had my instructional aides help me with it, and so I would just look at it before they sent it home. But we got pretty quick at it. But we had our students also helping us fill it out. So we used picture icons for the students, and then they would select what their favorite part of the day was, and so forth, and we would circle that. So we saved time at the end of the day, though. It was in our schedule. So.
And that reflection is important, but you built it in because you knew that that was a longer amount of time that it was going to take. And so, I think that's the part where it's really important to have that communication between home and school, because what your expectations as a parent and what our expectation of what we typically do in the general education might be very different. And so that communication is really important, and compromise to really understand that you're getting the information that you need, but also understanding that we don't always typically provide all this kind of information for every single student, because it would be challenging. And then I think the other part to remember is that students don't always articulate about their days. Even our very neurotypical students do not tell me about that. My oldest stepson, he would grunt at us. How was your day? That was his way of telling us. My youngest stepson, we'd ask him, how was your day? Oh, I had this for lunch and it was okay. And I played basketball after school. My middle stepson, who was selective mute as a youngster, would recount every single detail of his day to us. And the teacher said this, and I really didn't like it. And I was upset when they did this, and I wanted to tell them no. And so he would go through that. So I got from grunts to a retelling to I had basketball. My daughter, on the other hand, would like to make up stories about the day. So we would always do what was the movie title for your day? And it would always be something really dramatic, because that's my daughter. And so it's really about understanding what might a typical student be able to talk about with their day, and how do you engage that conversation? Because those are my children and how they talk about their day. Lynn, what is your experience with your children and how they describe their days?
One of mine kind of does the grunting, doesn't have much to say. And then the other one will sometimes have nothing to say. And then other times he'll tell me every detail. So it just depends. But I know that when I taught students who were nonverbal, it was really important to me that the parents were able to tell me how their child ate, how they slept. And then also I was able to tell the families about their child's day, because I knew that their child wasn't going to go home and tell their parents about their day. So
instead of saying nonverbal, how about complex communication needs? Because some of your students did grunt and use gestures and verbalize some things and use icons, but they weren't always able to articulate in full sentences. So their communication was a little more complex. And so you spending that time putting those together was to help them build up that communication so that parents could have that reciprocity of that. And that's an important part. And that's why you worked on that. But that's not necessarily something that every student will need in order to be successful. And our last tab is really about behavior. And so what's tricky about behavior is that it takes time, it takes energy, and it's governed by a bunch of rules that don't always make sense with special education. I think that's the best way I can describe it. So our K through 12 handbook is really governed by education codes. And so it gives you as a parent all of the ideas and what we think about are as important about our responsibilities, our standards, our dress code, what happens in harassment and discrimination, what happens from our policies, our uniform complaint procedures, and discipline policies here. So this is something that's given out every at the beginning of the year and is posted on our website. It gives you the school calendar. It talks about why we feel that this is important for you and the updated guidance. And then as you go all the way down, it talks to you about, I know, close your eyes because it might make you dizzy when I'm scrolling through. Here we go. Here's the student conduct, best policies, practices, and procedures. So really looking and understanding about these parts and restorative practices and why we are making decisions, the way we make decisions about student discipline can be helpful. This doesn't always talk though about when we work with students who have disabilities, who have IEPs, because their disciplinary kind of code is a lot more representative of their disabilities and how that might impact the discipline under their eligibility. But again, this gives you all of the general education kinds of reminders about discipline. So there's the English version and here's the Spanish version. We also every year give you an annual notice of your rights and responsibilities, and that's given through the San Diego Office of Education. And it's tailored to our criteria and it highlights new laws that affect our schools and provides information and resources from CDE. And these are updated annually and again are provided in Spanish. So those are the general education that everyone is under here in our district to about behavior. And that's a good just a resource for you to have so that you can quickly flip back to it to understand that. However, as we think about how we then look at special education and our students with disabilities, behavior looks differently in that we think about behavior maybe under a functional behavior assessment, which means that we notice that your child is, every time we start math, dropping to the ground. Every time we say it's math time, your child drops to the ground. So that would be, then we would say, let's call in someone like Lynn, our special education teacher on special assignment, who has a very high level of education expertise and training in behavior. And we say, Lynn, we're noticing that every time we start math, Leah drops to the ground. So Lynn's going to do what she calls a functional behavior assessment. And she's going to have a process where she's going to collect information about the problem behavior and determine what is its function. So why is Leah dropping to the ground every time I say it's math time? So now we could all just say, oh, it's because Leah doesn't like math. I don't know. Could it also be that Leah's hungry at 10 o'clock when it's math time? Leah needs to go to the bathroom at 10 o'clock when it's math time. Leah's expecting, because the schedule said, you know, or that Leah sees everyone getting on Success Maker to do their math intervention and she's not. So it's really what Lynn will go do is go into the classroom and observe and see and try to understand what is the reason why Leah is dropping to the ground every time we say it's math time. Now, that's a very simplified version. Now let's see if Lynn can correct me in how I said that.
No, that's just about, that's a good summary.
Look at this, another gold star for me. So, and then we have our behavior intervention plan. So after we have done what we call our functional behavior assessment, and again, this goes under behavior because this is our general education and how we deal with behavior, but now we're looking specifically at your child and whether they have some issues that we really need to look at and determine what's going on with their behavior so that we can help support them to be more available to learn. And so we do a behavior intervention plan, which is a formal written document that looks at our functional behavior assessment and says, So Lynn went in at 10 o'clock and saw that really Leah wanted to start on the computer. And so her computer time was at the end of the math block instead of at the beginning. So by switching that, we were able to adapt and figure out that if we just switch the time, we might be able to extinguish that behavior of her dropping to the ground. And we're not necessarily giving her what she wants because she still had to do that. It was just at the end of the period instead of at the beginning. So we're switching the time so that she's still getting that information and she's just doing it in a different order. Now, for me, I feel like that's a flexibility that we have as adults that can be flexible within our classrooms. I don't always have every teacher that agrees because there are certain things that they say, no, it has to be done in this order for this reason. And they're right in their classroom for that reason has to be done. So we have to then think about, okay, what can we do as a replacement to help that child be tolerant and wait till the end when their time is on the computer for that. And so Lynn's job is not only to look at the behavior and understand why it's happening, but also to help work through to minimize that and replace those challenges so that the child can be available to learn. So that's a really restrictive level, but then we can come down to, we just do behavior contracts and discipline notes. So, our typical kids, even our kids in our moderate severe, don't always need behavior intervention plans. And even our kids in the mild moderate setting sometimes need behavior intervention plans. It's really just about, we're seeing these behaviors that we're not able to address in a more generalized way. And these are now causing them to be unable to learn and be available to learn. So we have to address it. And that's why we have the FBA and our BIP. So our functional behavior assessment and our behavior intervention plan. But not every student needs that. So I've had students that in 4th and 5th grade were sometimes a little more naughty than I would have liked, that they found friends that didn't always lead them on the best paths. And so even trying to have conversations about, hey, when you and Lynn get together, Leah, you and Lynn cause a lot of trouble. So during lunchtime, I'd like for you to find another friend besides Lynn to play with. So we're going to write a contract. And why is it that you and Lynn can't play together? Well, because when you get together, you throw balls at other girls, you tease them, you're the mean girls. And so when you're apart, though, I don't have this problem. So I might do a behavior contract. So the behavior, and even though as a student with a special education plan or an IEP, the behavior isn't related to his disability. It's just because he needs more support in that area, or she needs more support in that area. All right, so we have about 10 minutes left and we have 3 or 4 slides. So that sounds like Leah talked too much and I apologize. So Lynn, we'll do our best to get you out of here, but if you have a few minutes and want to ask any questions, Lynn and I will be available. We'll stop the recording then. Heather, what's your question? You have to unmute though.
My son is Gavin. He's in Miss Huggins' class over at McCullough. She's been in there the whole year with 25 kids.
Wait, Heather, this is, we're recording this publicly. So
Sorry.
You may not want that. No, it's okay. I just want to, because
name and teacher. Sorry.
Right. So why don't we talk after we're done recording and we can talk about it.
That'll work. Go.
Okay. Now I just didn't want to be publicly out there that, you're concerned.
Child and teacher. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, so we've talked about the IEP binder and some of the different tabs that you might want to create and how you might want to organize some of the paperwork. So now the next thing is how to prepare for an IEP meeting so that you can participate actively. You can be an active participant in your child's IEP. One thing is to, review that information. So as you put the information into and organize it into the binder, that'll also give you an opportunity to kind of review the paperwork, see what you have, so that you can feel like you are informed and and you have something to bring to the table. You have extra information, maybe some from doctors or therapists or ABA. Also, you can talk to your child about the upcoming IEP meeting. You can talk to them about what things are hard, what things are easy. Information from your child about how things are going can really help you to direct the team. So if your child is saying something like, well, I'm really struggling with reading, and I feel like all the other students are reading and finishing way ahead of me, then you can maybe bring that up to the team. Think about your child's involvement in general education classes. So different students spend different amounts of time with their general education peers in the general education class, but thinking about that, is that important to you that your child spend time with their general education peers? And if so, what supports do you think your child will need to be successful and to feel confident and comfortable and in those classes? And if your child is in high school, and that's another thing to think about, is what type of classes do you want them to be in? and really thinking about their future. If your child will be attending all or part of the meeting. So think about that. I know that when my son was younger, he didn't attend his IEP meetings, but later he would attend, but maybe not attend to the very beginning when we're talking about his assessment results, because that can be hard for a child to understand and maybe even boring. But later when we were talking about his goals and accommodations and so forth, that time I wanted him to be there. And so he was an active participant also. You can also brainstorm with other people before the meeting, talk to friends, talk to family members, therapists. You can talk to a consultant to try to get ideas before the meeting, and then write down things that you feel are important to bring up. And then that's a link there where I got some of this information from, and you have links to this presentation, so you can access that link when you access the presentation. So
with really high leverage ed specialists that we have seen, I've seen a couple in our moderate to severe who actually have their students make a presentation about their IEPs. Miss Prentice does over at Nichols. So it's a really neat to see because she works with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And I've seen some of those presentations. They're phenomenal.
That's awesome. And this is another way that you can prepare for the IEP meeting. You can do a positive student profile to share with the team. This is just an example, but these are questions you could ask about your child. So, thinking about it so you have a direction when it comes to making sure that the team really knows about your child. So who is your child? So describing them, describing information such as their family, their personality, their likes and dislikes. What are your child's strengths? What are their successes, their challenges, their needs? What are your dreams for your child? And any other helpful information. This can be especially helpful if you're changing schools or changing teachers so that they have this information. But also, like I mentioned before, sometimes we see things differently at home than what we see at school. So we might notice some strengths that the child doesn't display at school because they're shy or their personality is kind of different at home.
One of the things that I noticed from a parent, Lynn, is that she talked about asking parents what your child typically does on the weekend, because that can also be very helpful. I have a hard time with what are your child's strengths, because when I ask parents that, it's like they feel like put on the spot. Like, I know my child has a lot of great strengths, but do I really want to mention that he's a great big brother, that he's kind, that he is empathetic, that he loves the dog? And the answer is yes, because I would use this as a teacher and as a principal to also make a connection with your child. So if I knew that your child really loved Disney, I would make it a point to find things that could be Disney oriented to make a connection with your child so that they would feel like this is a safe place, that people love and respect me and want me to be here. And sometimes those are what we really need to have in the schools, is those relationships. So those strengths, those successes help us, especially if your child has complex communication needs and can't always tell us these things. It helps us to think about ways that we can help motivate your child. So, these are really important to helping us to look at your child as a person, because that's what they are. First and foremost, is your child someone who's loving and who's lovable, and we all just want to help. We just help them in a different way. And so this helps us to see that wonderful part of who your child is.
Okay, and then you can eliminate surprises or at least reduce the number of surprises that will occur during an IEP meeting by asking the team members if they can share their ideas, like, for example, share the draft IEP, some parts of the assessment report, and so forth ahead of time. Now, a lot of the IEP is you're supposed to work together as a team to create the IEP, so that's why it's a draft IEP that you would be receiving. But just having that ahead of time, you can take a look at it. You can, if there's a word that you don't understand because you're not in the field, then you can maybe look it up, or you can ask somebody else, or you can highlight it so that you know to ask when you arrive for the meeting, for the team to explain what the part that is confusing to you. Know your rights. Leah talked about that earlier. That would be a section in your binder. Are there any areas where you and the school might disagree? So being prepared, that there might be areas that you might be in disagreement with and with the rest of the team, and how are you going to handle this? And think about it ahead of time, like what can you compromise with and where you can't, what is really important to you, and where you can kind of compromise, maybe thinking of some other ideas to bring up, that kind of a thing, but just being prepared for that. Consider whether you'd like to invite another person to go with you. So you can invite somebody else to come to the meeting with you, other than the other parent. So you can ask for a friend to come, a past teacher, a specialist. You can also get an advocate to come to the meeting, and make sure that you review your agenda with the advocate prior, because you want to make sure that the IEP, or sorry, not the IEP, the advocate understands what role you want them to play in the IEP process, because remember, you are still the parent. And so, the advocate is working for you and your child. So making sure that they know the role that you want them to play. And if you're going to have an advocate attend the meeting or somebody else, it is good to let the team know ahead of time. And then you can also record the IEP meeting. And so you would just need to give notice 24 hours in advance, because the IEP team will also need to record if you are recording. So if you feel like it's just a lot of information and it's too much for you to remember, that's an option for you. Okay, and I'm trying to go fast.
You did?
Okay, so being an active participant here, it's just some information about things that you can do during the meeting. Share information, share concerns, ask questions, offer suggestions. These are all things that you should be able to do. You don't just have to listen and nod your head. You can be an active participant, ask questions, offer suggestions, and keep the team focused on the big picture, which is your child's long-term needs, and speak on behalf of your child, or maybe your child can speak on behalf of themselves if they attend. Okay, next. So it's your choice to be involved in your child's IEP. To help you participate, the school must do certain things. They must schedule the IEP meeting at a time when you can attend, provide an interpreter for you if you need it. They have to inform you about the meeting and inform you about your rights. And you can attend, and I think that's more obvious nowadays, but you can attend the meeting via phone, via video conferencing if you need to. And
our last one is, if you need help, these are the people that we go to. We partner with TASK, which is the Oceanside partnership with TASK, which is a nonprofit organization that is really to help you navigate the special education disability services. And so our flyer here takes you to that partnership and the information for you about how to get in contact right here. This is the area that you can call and get in contact with them. Again, if you are in the process of the IEP and you disagree with your IEP team and you don't want to necessarily pay for an advocate or start, with the lawyer, and you want to find a way that can be confidential, but fast and efficient and free, this is done through our North Coastal Consortium for Special Education. It is confidential. It is satisfying. Well, I don't know about that, but it is fast and efficient and cost effective. And so this is really about helping you before we even have to get to mediation where you're not agreeing. This can be an opportunity for you to resolve any concerns or disagreements with your school district about your child's special education needs. All right, Lynn. And we just want to thank you. So when in doubt, you can communicate. Now, there are program coordinators that are in charge of working with your particular schools. And so I'm going to stop recording now and stop sharing. Stop recording. There it goes.